Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
be heard.
I have three people. Nick Abramson, 2 minutes.
I handed this resolution and flyer out. I hope everybody's gotten one. My name is Nick Abramson. I'm here on behalf of Woodstock Free Speech. We're a group of Woodstockers and some other individuals who, in reaction to Governor Cuomo's executive order banning boycotts against Israel, have started a campaign for free speech in Woodstock. And we're hoping that the town board will consider it, not tonight, but consider it and pass this resolution to protect the free speech rights of Woodstock residents and the right to boycott. We're doing this...
So, I'm sorry, you said he banned boycotts?
Yes, against, well, he's punishing.
Punish.
He's punishing by withdrawing financial support from organizations
I see.
that choose to boycott Israel.
So he's not banned, he's punished.
Well, according
No,
to
just
First...
wondering.
Well, I'm just answering you. Just according to First Amendment attorneys that we've spoken to and Center for Constitutional Rights, Palestine Legal, New York City Civil Liberties Union, this is unconstitutional and against free speech.
Are they going to litigate it?
As soon as they have a plaintiff. He's just starting a blacklist now. And as soon as there's a litigant who has standing in court, they're going to litigate it.
Well, that would be anybody who was banned, correct? Wouldn't they-
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
okay. So, I mean, so there is legal action.
There will be. There isn't now because this list is just starting to be compiled. Just starting. So a couple of other things that I just want to speak to. Woodstock Free Speech has a 2-month plan. We're not asking you to vote on this now. We're asking you to vote on this in the meeting, I guess your second meeting in September, which is September 20th. And the reason we're doing that is because we're having a number of community-wide events, educationals, to engage the local citizens, as well as to do some education. We're having a film, we have a petition, we're having 2 World Cafe kind of events, all around the issues of free speech, getting discussions going in town. We also have a petition. We've been out, it's online at woodstockfreespeech.org.
Can I comment on that for a second? Your petition? You know, it says, "We the people of Woodstock." It's almost 9 to 1 people who are signing that petition are not from Woodstock.
Right.
So either change your language or maybe edit out some of those names,
Well,
one or the other. It's
what
a
we
very
will-
inaccurate petition.
What we will present to you are only Woodstock names. And so we have that online, and we didn't do that online. And at this point, it's really hard to do it online. But on our petition that we're walking around and canvassing with, we're making a distinction between Woodstock residents and others. So far, we've been out, as I said, one day, last Wednesday. We have 138 or 40 signatures. We think about half of them from Woodstock. Most of the ones that are walking around town, obviously, were Woodstock. So, and we'll present this to the board, I guess, September 20th, unless there's a discussion of it before then, which we would love. I think for me, that's about it. So 2 months, we'll be back. If you guys choose to have a discussion, we'd love to be involved in it. We'd love you to come to our events. We're having a panel on Friday with a constitutional lawyer and a member of Jewish Voice for Peace. And you're all welcome. It's 7 o'clock town hall. Thank you.
Is it Colleen?
Oh, no.
Oh,
Meisler?
Yes, Adam is going to go.
Yeah, the next,
We're in trip, Ken.
yeah,
Okay. And I'm kind of worried to pronounce your last name.
Roofberg.
Rupert. Okay.
Hi, I'm Adam Roofberg from the town of live in Willow. I'm also with the Woodstock Free Speech campaign. And I'm just going to be addressing some issues about the executive order itself. So there's a little more awareness between the town board and the community.
Just to repeat it to 2 minutes.
Of course, absolutely. So the executive order states, it's Executive Order 157, it directs state agencies and authorities to invest public funds supporting the BDS campaign against Israel. Specific to that, personally, we consider this to be an unprecedented assault on our free speech and First Amendment rights. The Supreme Court held that political and human rights boycotts initiated by civil society are conduct that is considered speech protected under the First Amendment. The Supreme Court confirmed in 1982 in its unanimous decision in the NAACP versus Cleveland Hardware that was upheld. Further, the government cannot condition financial benefits on the requirement that a recipient adopt or renounce a certain political position. Cuomo's executive order imposes the unconstitutional condition on the receipt of state benefits by requiring New York State agencies to divest money and assets from entities because of the political opinion they express. Further, the order requires the creation of a blacklist, which Nick had addressed, and that will be published 180 days after the inception of the order, which was June 5th of this year. And of course, that sort of blacklist is reminiscent of the sort of McCarthyite Red Scare tactics, which I think we should all be concerned about. Further, the order is vague in its language, and it doesn't exactly and explicitly state what constitutes a boycott or what constitutes, promoting a boycott, for example. And we can add to that. Cuomo, of course, passed his two previous orders from 157 to 155 and 156. Both of those were boycotts. One of them was to boycott the New York State employees from traveling to Mississippi following the state's enactment of a law condoning discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, and the other order had a similar effect against North Carolina. So there it is, boycotting New York State agencies, boycotting other states within the country. He knows the power of boycotts, yet he has usurped and infringed upon our First Amendment rights. And therefore, of course, we believe it's imperative for the town board, the community, to investigate this, have a period of discovery, and then ultimately vote on it. We would hope that, of course, you would see things that this is clearly an infringement of First Amendment rights, and that we should protect the First Amendment rights of those people in the town of Woodstock, and further do what we can to have the executive order rescinded.
You know, I would like you and Nick, if you wouldn't mind, to come visit me in the office sometime soon. There are things about this I find troubling, but, you know, maybe you can tell me something that I don't know. So if you two would work together to come and see me, I'd appreciate that very much.
Sure.
We're not ready to debate this tonight. Could you-
No.
I sit in on that?
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
Yeah,
So-
I might also just suggest too that at Friday's discussion, there's going to be a constitutional lawyer.
Yeah, but I just want to sit down with a couple of people who are obviously very involved in this, you probably know what you're talking about. And, you know,
Sounds good.
we-
Sure.
we get
Thank
that.
you for the opportunity.
and who wrote this?
Excuse me?
Who wrote this resolution?
We did, and we passed it by two different attorneys.
Was there any other result from the other boycotts that Cuomo tried to impose in different states? Do you know what happened with those
I
boycotts?
do not specifically know.
Okay,
Yes, can I answer that?
sure.
The North Carolina boycott, New York State employees are not being sent to North Carolina. It's in force now
Well,
because of what they call the bathroom issue.
It's all about the
It's in transgender.
So I guess
transgender.
a question is just glaring to me is, and I can't talk to legality of it or not, you got two lawyers who weighed in, and I'll ask you their names in a minute, but the first thing that jumps out at me is, he's not saying it's illegal for people to do certain things, and he's not saying he's gonna put them in jail if they're doing them. He's not putting an end to your First Amendment right, because he's not jailing anybody. He's just saying he's the head of New York State and he's not gonna fund it. He's not gonna help you do it. He's not saying he's gonna punish you, well, financially, I know you're saying there's financial punishment, but.
Can let me interject here.
Sure.
There's a lot to debate here. Let's not debate.
Yes.
Yes.
Nobody's prepared to debate.
Right.
Yes,
So let's hold on.
we aren't either.
Yeah, good. That's a good point.
So,
Let's not debate now.
so not a debate, but just a question.
Yes.
And we've been in this position before. So, Jay White has brought a number of resolutions over the years. Some I've recused myself. But Jay and I have also been able to sit down and with the change of a word or two, been able to get me on board to support his initiatives.
Uh-huh.
You guys are open to discussion.
Of course.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
Because we're looking to have you protect us
Yeah.
from an unconstitutional law.
And my last question, not to debate, but anyway, the names of the attorneys, the reason being, if you've already spent money on an attorney, we might have to avoid that expense if we knew who your
Sure.
attorneys were.
Alan Levine, he's one of the speakers on Friday evening.
Okay.
He's a constitutional lawyer who has taught constitutional law in New York City law schools. He's worked in Mississippi, he's argued before the Supreme Court, he's very conversant with First Amendment issues.
Okay.
And there's also a woman by the name of Beth Stevens, who's an international lawyer who also reviewed this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Sure.
guys.
Yeah.
So I have,
All right, Elaine.
okay, I have the third part. Can I sit? Because I'm going to read it. Yes. So participating in civic responsibility is important to the well-being of our democracy as it seeks to develop responsible citizens who are social participants within their communities and within the government. Civic action specifically encourages citizens to engage in their duties within the political system because this guarantees that citizens will work to maintain the democratic values presented in the Bill of Rights of the U.S. Constitution and in the New York State Constitution, which includes values such as freedom, tolerance, diversity, equality, due process, and justice. During the civil rights movement, thousands of people accepted their civic responsibility. They stood up for racial equality and justice and against systematic racism, segregation, and Jim Crow laws. I did not mean systematic, I meant systemic. They used their First Amendment rights of free speech and assembly and their constitutionally protected right to boycott. They wrote letters to editors and coined a few articles. They peacefully protested in March, and they boycotted companies that discriminated against Black Americans. It's now our time to accept our civic responsibility. That is, it's time for us to stand up, speak out, and protect our First Amendment rights and freedoms as delineated by our U.S. and New York State constitutions. Based on this, I believe it's important that individually and collectively we work to rescind illegal orders and laws. In this case, it's Governor Cuomo's unconstitutional Executive Order 157. This is the first time an anti-BDS order has removed the prohibition from the legislative process and put it solely in the hands of the executive. Cuomo's order specifically singles out BDS, which is a growing movement that nonviolently protests Israel's human rights policies toward Palestinian people. By issuing this order, Cuomo penalizes those who engage in political expression of which he disapproves. It's my understanding that town board members across the state typically take an oath of office, which includes upholding both the U.S. and New York State constitutions. If my understanding is correct, then those of us connected to Woodstock free speech asked members of our Woodstock Town Board to protect its citizens' right of free speech and its citizens' right to boycott, and to ask Governor Cuomo to rescind his order. To not do so could potentially mean that a state-supported daycare center housed in a Presbyterian church could lose its state funding because the Presbyterian church voted to support BDS. This is blatantly wrong. Regardless of one's stance on this particular issue, BDS, please support the right of people to organize boycotts and to engage in dialogue and debate. Governor Cuomo's tweets make it abundantly clear that his executive order is clearly aimed to silence that debate. Without free speech, which undeniably includes political free speech, and without the right to boycott, we'll be living in a very different country than we have known. Today, Cuomo's illegal order affects me. At some point in the future, an illegal order may affect you. Please join us to protect our constitutionally guaranteed and protected rights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure I could look it up online. Do you guys have a copy of the wording of the executive order?
The executive order, it's on our website,
Okay.
woodstockfreespeech.org. You can read it there. Thank you.
I would like to remind the board that when I first reported on this issue last month, I spoke about the need to make a clear discrimination between the issue, in this case BDS, and freedom of speech. Perhaps the most startling example of that in our country, at least from my memory, is in the early 70s when the Nazis wanted to march through Skokie, Illinois. Skokie was picked out as a town because of its large population of survivors of the Holocaust, Jewish survivors, as well as a large population of Jews themselves. The local court said that they couldn't march. The ACLU went to the Supreme Court and fought and won for the Nazis to march through Skokie. The local courts then said, okay, you guys can march, but you can't display a swastika. ACLU went back and won the Nazis the right to march with a swastika. I can't think of a more extreme example where the issue and of the moment is, as well as the aspect of freedom of speech, was clearly delineated. And what I wanted to remind the board of is that when I mentioned this last month, every one of us nodded our heads sagely when it came to understanding that distinction. And I just wanted to leave it at that. Thank you.
Well, I'll leave it at this. I'm an absolute, unequivocal believer in free speech. I think those Nazis had that right to march as much as anyone else did, as distasteful and disgusting as they are. I think that Reverend Phelps and that disgusting Klan of his have every right to sit outside of people's funerals and say disgusting things about the people who died. So, I mean, I defend all that, and I'm glad we have the ACLU to stand up for those rights. At the same point, same time, I feel speech has consequences. I don't have to hire Phelps for nothing, and I don't have to hire Nazis for nothing. And if I'm a member sitting in Skokie and I see some guy marching with a Nazi flag that used to mow my lawn, that guy ain't gonna mow my lawn no more. So there's a difference between free speech and the consequences of free speech. But let's move on.
I think you just lost the Nazi vote, though. Just saying.
Just saying?
Just saying.
Well, Donald's got him.
Donald's got it, yeah.
Okay, so shall we proceed?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I'd like to make an announcement.
Announcements?
Do you want to go first, Jack?
I'm sorry.
Did you want to make an announcement?
Yes, I would. Last week at our meeting, we had a wonderful demonstration from the Seaside Committee on the Kumo project. And we were informed that the Como does not have a budget for its upkeep and repair, and that people who clearly are invited to come to the Como and enjoy the property can be at risk if there's a falling tree or branch or roots that you stumble over or whatever. During that session, Jeremy remarked that we can't raise any more money from levying taxes due to the governor's 2% cap, if I understand correctly. And
This year it's going to be a 0.56%.
yes. And I feel very strongly that we need to have a fund, a budget, to protect the citizens, to protect the property. It's the most valuable single thing that we have. Therefore, I believe that the answer to the financial problem is to stop jerking around and put the Rock City Road, the Mountain View parking lot on the same basis as the Rock City Road parking lot. Where we charge $5 for all day long I think it's a total of $89 a year. That lot, the Roxbury Road lot, after expenses provides $40K a year to the town. If we put when we put the Mountain View parking lot on the same basis, I don't expect we're gonna immediately get $40K. It'll take a little while before it fills up. But by golly, I pass that lot every day, and on holidays and other days, I see the damn thing is filled up, or close to filled up. We are therefore, we're not going to install the same parking fee. We're putting our property and our citizens and our visitors at risk. Which way do you want to go?
Well, I'm going to go the other way, where you talk about fees and volunteers and, and putting up, the same way that the people at the dog park raise funds for their dog park. The people who use this property, why shouldn't they kick in a few pennies to keep it up?
The Como is a totally different ballpark than the
But it's
dog
not.
park.
We have regular visitors here who regularly bring their dogs here and regularly walk those trails, and there's absolutely no reason in the world why they shouldn't contribute to their upkeep.
So you're suggesting that we are going to overlook that, let me call it pot of gold?
No, I'm not even going to, listen, the pot of gold belongs to the taxpayers, it doesn't belong to the Como. And I'm talking about, if we make that parking, paid parking, that belongs to the people of Woodstock, it doesn't belong to the Como. What I'm saying is, the people who use this property, I think, should consider contributing at least a little time or a little money
The
to its upkeep.
40,000 that we get after expenses from Roxbury Road doesn't go back to the taxpayers, it comes to the town for applying to the budget.
Well, but it does go back to the taxpayer, because if you increase your revenue $40,000, you can debit your expenses $40,000, in this case, the levy.
And therefore, the same thing can and should happen with the potential funds from the Mountain View parking lot.
Right, but if I understood the logic of your thing, maybe I didn't. We make that paid parking, and we take that $40,000 to improve the Como.
What?
Was that kind of what you said?
Well, it's
No.
not a direct relationship between
No.
the parking lot and the Como. It could be, the parking lot, and then that goes into our regular funding, and then from there, we allocate a certain amount of money for the Como or wherever else we need the money.
The 40K comes into the town
Well,
coffers
listen,
and gets
I agree that we
distributed.
gotta get some money someplace to do some maintenance around here.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying no to the idea of making paid parking for Mountain View, but I wouldn't do it for that reason.
It sounds like no.
We talked about long-term parking and doing some kind of long-term parking.
Long-term paid parking.
Paid parking
Yes.
over
Yes.
at Mountain View for people who want to park overnight, go back to the city, leave their car up here. I think that would be a really nice way to start. We've talked about that many times. I don't
Yeah.
think anyone's in disagreement about that.
Right.
And,
So I would consider starting something
Why,
like
why
that
don't you come
first.
back with a proposal for that, Jay? Why don't you come back with some proposal and mechanism to start there?
So start with long-term parking fees
I mean, you could take
overnight.
I will do that.
20 or
It will
40
not be long-term parking only. I won't do that. I will be happy to present a proposal to this board for paid long-term parking and paid parking for the rest of the Mountain View.
That's fine, but they don't have to, we could institute one, because if we're gonna go pay parking there, then we have to designate parking spots.
Yeah,
And that
no
takes,
problem.
well, but it takes money.
Not very much, because I don't visualize or want to have a macadamized surface in there. And we can lay out parking areas easily and inexpensively with the concrete blocks that are the same use over here. And blah, blah, blah. I will do it, but as I say, I'll do it with a total paid parking.
Right. Well, but what all I'm saying is, we could institute that long-term parking next week,
Yeah,
because it's not gonna take much.
but I will not vote for paid long-term parking unless we also
Jerry, you
are.
have to learn to compromise.
I've been compromising for over 20 years, trying to get the Mountain View parking lots paid.
I was gonna say, what happened to the other 68 years?
69.
Thank you, Kathy. Before he starts again, Jeremy, why don't you go to your announcements?
Can I, oh, you haven't?
No, go ahead, no.
I just wanted to say, in view of what's been going on in Texas and Baton Rouge, you know, I've hired many of the young police officers we have working for Woodstock, and I want to thank those men for putting themselves in front of the rest of the public, day after day, to protect us, and putting their lives on the line for us. And we should be thankful for the police department we have and what they do for us.
Since
You're
you,
not done?
Is this an introduction to you?
That's all I want.
I would just echo what Kathy
Thank you
said.
for that.
I would echo what Kathy said. You know, last Friday there was an incident in Woodstock where we had to have the state police, the sheriff's department, Woodstock Police Department, the fire department, all come together. And you should all be proud, we should all be very proud of how well they all work together. I know that's not true in a lot of other communities. I talked to Major Bob Nuzzo from the state police, to thank him, and you know, just tell him how good it feels to have such great teamwork. And he also said it doesn't happen everywhere, but we really do appreciate what goes on in Woodstock here. You know, there's no egos. It turned out that there was another agency there first. The troopers showed up. They said, "You're seen. What do you need from us?" There was no, you know, fighting and whatnot. And along with that, the Woodstock Highway Department and Fire Department, everybody treated everybody really well.
Yeah, I'd like to add two accolades for our police department, because every time they've been involved in things, they've been professional, they've been courteous, they've been effective, but they've also been very low-key in the way they go about things. So I agree with what was said last week as well as tonight, that we have a fabulous police department, and we do our best to screen well. I think Clayton does a great job with his leadership and his role model, and I do think we have a great police department. We're very lucky to have a police department that cares about the community.
Well, as long as we're handing out accolades.
I've also gone into the police department many times and spoken to the officers on the street as well. And I'm always careful to tell them to be careful. I think it's important for them to hear it from the public. They certainly are as careful as possible, but I think when we tell them that, it indicates a hell of a lot of care about what they do for us.
You know, Jay, you're right, and we do live in a great community because during part of this incident where there were a number of public there, and several of them shouted over at Clayton, "This is the guys, we love you guys, be careful." So, you know, I think the public really does understand and appreciate what we have here.
Well, going back to accolades. I offer one to Company 5. The Company 5 ambulance has been to my house so many times of late that some people have complained that Jeremy Wilbur has an accessory structure. I just want them to know that I've applied to the building department, and that ambulance is going to be on my site for an accessory structure.
Oh, good.
And
We'll notify Mark.
hopefully those complaints will go away. Well, the Company 5, I thank you again. Okay, are you done
Yes.
with announcements?
I have an announcement.
You have an announcement?
I
Let's hear your announcement.
I do indeed. Okay, so the first announcement is, as as was told, I forget which meeting we had, but the Preserve the Keegan Bell, just want to remind people, when the community center was redone, the bell came off the roof and it was stored, and now there's a plan to put the bell back on the property on a nice kiosk. And there is a fundraiser, I'll read it off, so, bad memory these days. This coming Saturday, July 23rd, at the Mescal-Hornbeck Community Center, runs from 8 to 10 p.m., $15 requested, and it is a fundraiser. There'll be musicians, there'll be Ed Sanders, Brian Hollander, Giles Malkine, Mikhail
Gilles.
Gilles, thank you.
Gilles. No way.
Gilles, thank you, I learned again tonight. So Gilles Malkine.
We used to call him Guy Les.
Up here. So again, this Saturday, July 23rd, 8 to 10 at the Mescal-Hornbeck Community Center. Music, I heard there'll be some readings, I don't know if it says that here, but should be a great night and a great cause. I think we'll all be delighted to see that bell back on display for the community. So that was one announcement. The other is, I had the great luck of this afternoon to, in my time at the town offices, to bump into the New York State fellow who works on roads, and I don't know if he's a liaison, what his exact title is, but one of the things I mentioned during the campaign was crosswalks, and I learned some things about crosswalks. One thing that he mentioned was that the New York State does the east side of the river one year and the west side another year. So this is our year to get some attention, which is good news. Our crosswalks, which are a little faded, will get painted this year, so that's the good news. And I also, as long as I had his attention, I said, oh, by the way, how do we get a new crosswalk? Because I've been an advocate of at least one new crosswalk. And so we talked a little bit about the process on that. So I know that Jay had expressed interest in working on crosswalks. He's already done some work on it. I've already done some work on it. So I didn't talk with Jay. This just came up late today. But anyway, hopefully Jay and I can talk together and we can bring something perhaps to the next meeting. We have a few weeks to work on it. So, but there's a chance we could get a new crosswalk this year because they haven't done our crosswalks yet. So if we get going, fingers are crossed, not a guarantee, but there's hope. So.
Good. Okay, so my announcement is, as we proceed, well, I should say, as a result of the July 15 meeting, this is the meeting of the subcommittee I put together to put together an inventory, a document to furnish to various consultants who may wish to offer their services to the town to update our comprehensive plan. So we've completed that part of the project, and we also completed the language for a request for proposals. And as we made the following suggestions during the course of that meeting. If the town board seek and appoint a committee of 5, which we'll call the selection committee, to sort through the responses, which are due September 6th, to the RFP, and give the town board its top 3 candidates. The town board would then make a final decision, and remember that the town board reserves the right to reject any and all candidates. It is recommended the selection committee issue its recommendation no later than early November, thus giving the town board time before the end of the year to make a final selection. We should choose this committee based on chops, savvy, intelligence, experience, etc. The idea of this approach is to find smart people who may not want to commit to the whole comprehensive plan process. This process, by the way, is the same process that we were mandated to use, and I'm sorry to bring up his name, by the governor's office in storm recovery, to pick the engineers that we engaged for the various projects that we're getting through the storm recovery fund, which is to say, a request for proposals was put out, responses were received, a committee of 5 was established, none of whom could be a decision maker. That is, no member of the town board could serve on this committee. It had to be just people who, non-decision makers. So this is kind of model on that approach. With a consultant in place, the town board then would appoint a committee of 7 or 9, or whatever, citizens of the town willing to do the work in developing the comprehensive plan. The criteria for membership on this committee is willingness to work and demonstrated devotion to the community. So it would be nice to issue the RFP this evening, tonight, along with an announcement that the inventory is available on the town website and open for comment. This will give potential consultants plenty of time to submit the proposals no later than September 6th. Richard Hefner, Iris York, Susan Goldman, and Ken Panza, as well as Councilwoman Laura Ricky, all did great work. I thank them very much. And this ends the supervisory subcommittee, and going forward, the town board will now take charge of the project. If any of the subcommittee members I just mentioned wish to continue participating, I would highly recommend them.
Yeah, can I just jump in for a second and just say, I know you've already thanked people in the documented agenda. I want to say thank you as well. We had a fabulous committee. I know Iris is here, but the other people on the committee was just fabulous. So everybody was very caring, dedicated, contributed, and I felt good about the product because of the work of all the committee members.
I would be very happy to move forward with this recommendation. I think the process that we used for Gozar, where we were totally hands-off on our first selection, worked out perfectly. Couldn't have asked for better. You know, and then when the other committee, when the actual comprehensive plan committee, if you want to have a liaison back and forth there, that would be appropriate. But I think the board should stay out of the first part of it.
Yeah, and I'm happy to be a liaison in the comprehensive plan, something I've been very interested in for a long time, so I'd be very happy to help in any way that makes sense as we proceed.
I'm ready to move forward.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you to all the people who did the comprehensive plan.
So then let's augment our announcements with an appeal to the public. So you just heard us, we're looking for a committee of 5 people who will review the request for proposals that we will be issuing tomorrow, and which are due September 6th. So September 6th, we will open them all in a public meeting, but then we were going to just take all of them and hand them off to this committee of 5. And again, the commitment is really very narrow. It's just to go through all these. You'll have a copy of the RFP. You'll have the request, the responses to the RFPs in front of you. You can see how they match up to what the town was asking for, and make a recommendation of the top 3 candidates to the town board.
I think if it goes on, they only met 2 or 3 times, right?
Yes, they met 2 or 3 times.
So there's
And
not-
I suspect that there's not going to be much more than 6 or 7 proposals at the most, because that's really about the number of vendors in the immediate Hudson Valley area that might be interested in this kind of project. So, so it might take 2, it might take 3 meetings, but it's not committing you to the entire comprehensive plan process, which of course will stretch over probably a good part of a year. So if anybody's interested, do let me know. You can contact me, or you can contact the town clerk and express your interest in helping us out. And I appreciate that very much. So with that,
Can you do public notices of something like that when we're asking? for-
yeah, we'll publicize that.
Okay, thanks.
And of course, we're depending on Woodstock times.
Who may or may not post this in its article.
We got some trouble, yes.
Uh-oh.
Be resolved to accept minutes, for meetings held on June 21 and July 12. All in favor? Be resolved to accept the report.
Excuse me, we can't hear you.
Aye.
Be resolved to authorize the transfer for the transfer sheet. All in favor?
Aye.
Be resolved to authorize payment of lottery voucher in the amount of $234,061.54.
Second.
In favor? Be resolved to hire for the Woodstock Summer Recreation Program seasonal workers Alicia Zimiar, $9 per hour effective July 15, 2016, and Madeline Riley Weir, $9.50 per hour effective July 11, 16. In favor? Be resolved to appoint Officer Christopher Benson, contingent permanent full-time police officer for the town of Woodstock at $20.83 per hour effective August 1, 2016.
Second.
Be resolved to issue the following request for proposal with an effective date of July 20, 2016.
Second.
Now, it's up to you. You want me to read this into the record, or are you willing to just accept this as written?
I will accept it as written.
Oh, except that I read it.
And second.
Okay, all in favor?
And well done by Jeremy, by the way, for the RFP. I know that the group reviewed it, but Jeremy gave us a great draft too.
Oh, no, but you guys put in some great feedback. No, it's very good.
Well done.
Okay, Jay, it's your show.
Okay, last week, handed out a resolution to the town board and to the press, asking that it be voted on tonight. And let me quickly read what it says. Whereas the daily incidence of the unbridled violent use of guns to kill and maim in this country and the consequent terror and deaths of children, adults, and even among the police indicate that gun violence is uncontrolled. And whereas the need for legislative attention to this issue is nationwide but poorly responded to, and the expectation of the public is for protection by the police from that violence. And whereas the New York State Legislature and the governor have acted and created the New York State Secure Ammunition and Firearms Enforcement Act of 2013, the New York SAFE Act, that requires all stolen guns to be reported, that bans high-capacity magazines, and that requires the registration of all assault-type weapons. And whereas the Ulster County Sheriff shocked and terrified us by stating that he and his department are not, quote, are not actively looking to enforce any aspect of the SAFE Act, unquote. Therefore, be it resolved that the Woodstock Town Board, as the elected town government responsible for the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens, finds the sheriff's attitude to be dangerous to the public safety and possibly illegal, since the sheriff has decided which laws he will observe and enforce, although the tax-paying public do not have that privilege. And be it further resolved that the Woodstock Town Board, in the full awareness of the dangers to the public from the violent use of firearms, declares its loss of confidence in the Ulster County Sheriff and his department. And be it further resolved that this resolution will be forwarded to the Ulster County Supervisors Association, to our town's representative to the Ulster County Legislature, to the Ulster County Executive, and to the Office of the Ulster County Sheriff. So that's what I ask that the board vote on tonight.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Well, I'm going to give myself a big kick in the ass, Jay.
Pardon?
I said I'm about to give myself a big kick in the ass. And just with the caveat, I'm absolutely, totally, completely opposed to this resolution, but I will give you your second so that you can say what you want to say about it, and then we'll vote on it.
Well,
And if you think the resolution speaks for itself, that's fine. I'm ready.
I believe the resolution speaks for itself.
All in favor?
Is there any discussion?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, I guess I'm interested to see what others think of, we know what Jeremy thinks about it. My one thought, though, myself is, you know, it sounds like, I mean, we're taking things the sheriff said could be out of context, maybe so, maybe not. We're not really discussing with him what he's thinking, or we're not seeing a bigger picture. I'm a little concerned that we're not seeing a bigger picture before coming down with a position. I know that's my thought. Bill, were you going to have to say something?
You know, it's probably the only member of the town board that actually owns a gun, and somebody who believes in the Second Amendment. I also acknowledge that we need to change the dynamics in this country. There's no doubt about it. That's not what this debate is about. So, you know, I'm not voting one way or another because of how I feel on that. But I will say that and you asked me about this earlier today, I wouldn't tell a Woodstock cop to write a parking ticket, much less direct the sheriff to enforce this rule or that rule. We oversee the entire force. We don't see their day-to-day activities. We're not law enforcement experts, and you know, it's not our place to tell them how to do their job. Also, I can tell you that after last Friday, and having dealt with 15 or 20 sheriff's deputies and a lieutenant, I have not lost faith in Paul Van Borkum. I think he's doing a great job. I don't even know what he said with regard to this, so I can't say I agree or disagree with him. But, you know, and I know a couple of months ago he made a statement about carrying. Unfortunately, he said he did go a little too far and maybe implied that, you know, everybody should have guns. But he also said something very important that got missed, in that he said, look, there are not a lot of us out there. We need your help. And what he was saying was, we need you to be our eyes and our ears, we need you to communicate with us. So it wasn't all about arming up and walking around. And unfortunately, I think that part of the message got lost. I think Paul's doing a great job as sheriff. That does not mean I agree with everything he does every day. Doesn't mean that he can't improve here or there. But I can't say, no way have I lost confidence in him. And you know, I've heard a number of people say, while the intent of the SAFE Act was a wonderful one, it was passed in the middle of the night and nobody even thought about what they were putting in there or how they were going to enforce it. You know, they turned around and passed the law and said, okay, figure it out. Not unlike a previous town board that adopted a wetlands law and then said, oh, let the building inspector figure it out. That was a failure. So, and again, I'm not taking positions left or right on any of that stuff, other than I think Paul's doing a pretty good job. So.
Well,
Right, Kathy's turn, whoop, Jake, Kathy's turn.
You know, it's really hard when laws are passed to determine just how much someone's enforcing it, to what degree they're enforcing it. Are they enforcing it a little or not at all? You know, to make this kind of to pass this kind of a resolution and assume that he's totally not going to follow the law at all, I think is a little bit more than I can agree to. So I would hope he would enforce the law as well as he can. He probably isn't, but that doesn't mean he's totally disregarding the law. So at this point, I really cannot pass this kind of a resolution. I must say that, you know, I should probably have a much more of a personal talk with the sheriff to determine what he's really thinking and about the law before I make a real final decision. But as far as tonight goes, I couldn't possibly support that.
can I talk?
Sure.
I took the trouble to call the sheriff and to ask him if what he said that I quoted here is accurate, and he said, yes, it is. He said that he and his department are, quote, are not actively looking to enforce any aspect of the SAFE Act, unquote. That's what he said. You can take my word for it that he gave me his word on it. I believe that to discuss other aspects of his work may or may not be valid in a different setting. But we live in a country where daily, I don't think that's an exaggeration, people, whether they're police or maniacs or whoever, are running around shooting people. We have a law in New York State, whether it was passed in the middle of the night or not, I don't know. I've been told that that was the case and blah, blah, blah. But it happens to be a law in New York State, what we call the SAFE Act. It's an act that is designed and recommended to be enforced, recognized and enforced by New York State Police, not just the troopers and not just our local police, but every other police department, including the sheriff. And to wonder whether he's doing a good job or not with his other aspects of his work, is not the case here. The case is, he has announced that he has stood by his statement that he's not actively looking to enforce any aspect of the SAFE Act. To me, is terrible. I know Paul. I like him personally. He and I have had a number of very friendly and funny conversations, but this is not the case. And I respectfully implore all of you to remember what country we live in, the state of the country that we live in, and the fact that we, in my opinion, cannot allow this statement to go unchallenged.
Well, I'm going to promise you, I'm going to try and call, I didn't call him last week, between last week and this week. I will call him this week and get a better sense of what he's really advocating with this.
So,
Yeah, when he's on the radio show next, I'll grill him on the radio about it.
You know, there's a difference between not actively enforcing and not enforcing, period. You know, I have no doubt that we have officers in every agency, young officers go out and they actively enforce speeding tickets. I'm sure that if you polled the older officers, they don't so actively enforce speeding tickets.
Bill, with respect, that is not the point of this.
But you're saying that we've lost total faith in them. I mean,
I
it's just simply
said,
not the case.
I said that we've lost, that we don't have confidence.
Right.
And I invited the board, when I presented this last week, to suggest language changes if they came up. Kathy wants to take the opportunity, make the opportunity to talk to the sheriff. I take that as a request to put this off, a vote on this off for our next meeting, which will be next month. Nevertheless, if
Yes.
anybody has, as I said last week, has any suggestions for language changes, as I said, I will entertain them.
Kathy, are you going to meet him in person or over the phone?
No, I'll probably just call, try and get in touch.
Because I'd be interested, if it were a way to do a three-way conversation, I'd be interested to, unless you'd rather just have it one-on-one, but
No, I mean, we could try and call from the office here and just call them together, that would be fine.
yeah, okay.
It may very well be that the sheriff has the freedom or the responsibility, or however to put it, to decide that he's not going to enforce this act. You know.
Well, again, actively enforce or enforce are
Yeah,
two
okay.
big
I
differences.
don't see the distinction, but just to make my point, I don't, that may be the sheriff's, responsibility. I believe deeply that it's my and our responsibility to say, no, no. So if it's agreeable to the board, can we put this off for a vote in our
Move to
next
table.
meeting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
second.
All in favor of the motion?
So,
To
and
table.
table. And I just want to say, Jay, I am, from campaigning with you and getting to know you from part of this board, is I always appreciate your caring for human rights. And I appreciate that you bring these topics forward, you make us think, whether we agree yes or agree no. I have tremendous respect for you for seeing these topics and bringing them forward to make sure we think about them. So thank you for your caring for the.
I would just add one more.
Yes, I'd love to.
Jay,
Thank you.
I would also just remind you that Paul is a duly elected official, elected by the people of Ulster.
Yeah.
And, you know, a letter to the editor and letters from the public might be more, have a bigger effort on Paul's decisions than letters from town board.
You may be right, but in any event, I want to go ahead with this.
Okay, since this is your baby, I'm not going to look this up, but why don't you talk to the state police and find out how actively they're enforcing it? since they're under the direct control of the governor.
Yes.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I may do that. I may do that. I probably will, but I won't make a hard promise right now.
Okay.
I'm easy.
Any other
Yes, you
business?
are, Jay. That's why we get along.
Any other business? Move to adjourn.
Second.
Favor?
Bye.
Uh,
Any